Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. I also like looking at your comments. So I'm going to go through a few of your questions and comments regarding how Boris Johnson and the Conservatives seem to have completely cocked up in their estimation of how the United States would react to their latest law-breaking antics. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So we're going to go through a couple of the ignorant ones first. Just to get those out of the way, then we'll go on to maybe some more sensible ones. So, person asking here, we'll guess at where they come from. It says, what's wrong with the US trade deal? Don't forget that if it had not been for America, Buddy Bias, I think that might be me. Is that my new name? I like that name. Would be speaking German right now. Ich kann ein bisschen Deutsch sprechen. Früher konnte ich echt gut sprechen. Aber nicht länger. But anyway, this it's I don't know whether it's good or it's bad. You know, we obviously know in history, if your country doesn't teach citizens about historical events, if they only teach it, you know, from the point of view of shining the best light on your country, you will get a very poor education on those historical events. Now, the good thing about history, of course, is everyone's free to read it in books and watch documentaries and things like that. And if you're given a more, unpolished version of it, then you can educate yourself. In Britain, of course, very famously, most British citizens do not have an accurate representation of the days of empire because, if you taught that in an unvarnished sense, that would not be shining the best light on you. And the same with the Second World War, and it appears America as well. So, classic thing, you get this every now and then. Oh, you'd be speaking German if it weren't for the Americans. No. In fact, in the last week, for example, we celebrated an anniversary in this country. It was the 80th anniversary of the Battle for Britain. The Battle for Britain was, as you might expect, that was the battle to repulse the attempted German invasion of the United Kingdom 80 years ago. It was successful, thankfully. Now, we were not alone in this. We had a great deal of help. A lot of the ignorant British citizens will think, oh, we did it on our own. No, we didn't. We did even have help from North America. Canada helped us. We had Canadian pilots involved in the Battle for Britain as well as others around Europe and around the Commonwealth too. We did not have help from the United States. 80 years ago, the United States was not involved in the Second World War. As I'm sure any American will know, the United States was pulled into the Second World War when Japan attacked them, which is not 80 years ago. So that's not true there. Now, of course, that is not to downplay America's role when it did join in, because there are a number of countries in Europe who absolutely owe their thanks to America and have given their thanks to America for helping liberate them. The United Kingdom is not one of them. Then on to the next one. Sorry, another little bit of ignorance. It says, you know that only Democrats support Ireland. Before I go on to the rest of it, can I just say, absolutely be my guest to get that out in America. You go campaigning for Trump on that basis in America. That'd be fantastic. I would love for the American people to believe that only the Democrats support Ireland. That will do Biden's presidential bid no end of good. Please do that. Please go and campaign in the US on that basis. Anyway, you know that only the Democrats support Ireland. The Republican Party is fully behind the United Kingdom. And now ask yourself, which party controls both the presidency and the Senate, which is the body which confirms treaties? Now, the Senate does indeed confirm treaties, and the Senate does indeed have more Republicans than Democrats. But here's the thing. I'm sure you know this because obviously you sound like an expert in American politics, and I'm certainly not. I'm a casual but interested observer. But Mick Mulvaney, who is Donald Trump's personal envoy to Northern Ireland, the guy he selected, speaks for Donald Trump, said, and I quote, the Trump administration, State Department, and the US Congress would all be aligned in the desire to see the Good Friday Agreement preserved, to see the lack of a border maintained. Now, I did say at the time in a video that he was a bit more diplomatic than some American politicians have been in terms of our current desire to breach the Northern Ireland Protocol. He talked about, for example, Boris Johnson breaching the Good Friday Agreement by accident, but he still warned against breaching it. That is the point. The other thing is that it's not largely, you've got a hell of a lot of Democrats who are sticking up here for Ireland, but you've also had some Republicans do it as well. And then finally, and again, sure you know this, because obviously you sound like you know all about American politics. So let us say, for example, this was a partisan issue, which it is not, but let's say it were. So let's say every single Republican in the Senate were to vote in favour of a trade deal that Donald Trump would negotiate, whether or not we were complying with our obligations towards Ireland. As it would not be enough, because it is not enough to get a simple majority in the Senate. You need a 2/3 majority. And Republicans have, I believe, 53% of the Senate, which is not enough. So there we go. Right, now, on to some more sensible ones, I hope. So this one says, did the UK not forget that the US runs the show? Now, this is actually going to be quite interesting. We're going to learn a few things. I mean, one question that is often asked is how does the UK not ever come to terms with its past? I mean, we've done good things in the past, great things in the past. There's some very naughty things in the past as well. And also, how are we not understanding that our position in the world has much weakened? Massively weakened. Well, part of it is because it's never really gone badly wrong for us. In the way, for example, you look at the likes of Germany and Japan, particularly Germany. I think Germany is an excellent example of a country that had to face reality and did very well out of it, because who'd have thought it? When you actually face facts, you actually succeed. The UK hasn't had to do that, so we've just seen ourselves dwindle. I mean, we absolutely got away with it by being able to join the EEC, which of course became the EU. There we were able to have a major say at the table, be one of the most influential countries in the world. And even then, even when we were a member of the EU, and even when we had governments that were fully in support of membership of the EU, we never really fully utilised that power. We always sort of felt that we had to, or our governments felt that they had to keep the EU at arm's length, you know, to distract from problems in the country that were that government's fault, not the EU's fault. So the UK is absolutely forgetting that the US runs the show. The problem with a lot of the people who are influencing the UK government at the moment have this British exceptionalism. They have this attitude that we are much stronger than we are, that these countries need a deal with us. That's the thing. It's like, you know, all these other countries need a deal with us more than we need with them. And they're completely ignoring the mathematics of the fact that the UK is losing almost all of its trade agreements, almost all of them, in a few months' time. All gone. Bye-bye. The other countries around the world with whom we don't have an agreement are losing one. It might be a series of them if they have a series of agreements with us, but they're losing agreements with one country, the UK. All the rest are preserved. We're losing most of the world. And that just doesn't seem to factor into them. They're not that good at maths. And of course, the United States gets away with an awful lot of naughtiness because it is so powerful. If you are powerful, you get away with these things. If we were powerful, then lots of countries wouldn't be saying, what are you playing at with this internal market bill? But we're not. We've actually weakened ourselves. We already weren't as powerful as we thought a few years ago. We've now become less powerful. Because where we were a few years ago is we had a seat at the table of the EU. And we had major influence in the EU. That made us reasonably powerful. And we were also, because, you know, we had this idea that because we were a good little poodle for America, that they would always, when we needed them, they would back us. No. We are basically, if you imagine, I don't want to overplay this too much, but if you imagine the US being this big playground bully, we were the little weedy kid behind them going, yeah, like that. That's how Bill Bailey, I think, once put it. We're just the one that stood behind them, stuck with them as some sort of protection. We don't really strike it out on our own because we're not powerful enough to do so. Anyway, next one. So in terms of trade deal, says, so we're not going to get an EU trade deal. It looks like, again, it's very difficult to know. Everything's very opaque at the moment. Certainly, you can get the impression that the Conservatives don't want a trade deal with the EU. Seems mad, but there you go. And also with the way we're carrying on at the moment, it doesn't look like we're going to get a US one. We're certainly not going to get a US one before the end of the transition period. That is now completely out of it. So saying here, so is it on Australia and China giving the UK a deal, which is in total better than any deal the UK had via the EU? Maybe Canada and Russia, quite overwhelmed all the possibilities. I mean, if we just go through those. So Australia at the moment is negotiating with the EU. That's much more important. We do technically have a bit of a carryover agreement with Australia. So I don't think Australia are really in a massive hurry to do anything with us. If we were to try and negotiate, because they sort of have that in the bank already. The carryover deal is in the bank there. And then it's much more important for them to upgrade their arrangements with the EU than it is with the UK. The EU is a much larger market. And also the EU has two other advantages. As well as being a much larger market, it also negotiates seriously, doesn't piss about, and it honours its international agreements. So, a few little advantages there. China, yeah. So I can imagine that. I can imagine going across. I mean, a few years ago, Theresa May did go to China and says, okay, how about giving us some better terms? And China at that point went, no. Imagine now. So, China going, oh, right. So I see you've been recently taking America's side against us in this trade war. You've been speaking against, Chinese businesses. You've been talking about dropping contracts with Huawei, for example. It's not really the sort of thing someone who wants a trade deal does. So China's likely to be gone. And in actual fact, if you're going to have to choose, I'm not saying it was foolish to choose the US against China. If you're going to have to choose, you should choose the US against China. In our position, we trade much more with the US than we ever could with China. China's market's far too close for us to ever make serious inroads into. Who's next? Canada. Yeah, Canada have told us, yeah, we're quite happy to talk with you. You get your trade deal with the EU first, then we'll talk. Russia. I mean, I know Boris Johnson is very much in the pay of the Russians, but diplomatically, we're not on the best of terms. They keep poisoning people in our country. And when they poison people in other countries, we're not very happy about that either. So, yeah, diplomatically difficult, even for Conservatives. Even though Conservatives know that Boris Johnson is in their pay, they're not happy about it. They're not going along with it. They don't go along with it in the same way that Republicans seem to go along with Trump being under Putin's thumb. So, yeah, I mean, really, I'm being genuine here. I don't know where the next trade deal is coming from, genuinely. Our main targets just are gone. They're gone. They're not talking to us. And the only people who are talking to us at the moment that we know of are the EU. And what the EU are saying is, you're going to, as they've been saying all year, are you going to stick to your withdrawal agreement? Because that should be the start. They shouldn't even have to mention that. That shouldn't even be an issue. They've signed a withdrawal agreement. Of course, they should stick to it. But all year, we seem to have been wanting to renege on it. So they've kept asking us, are you going to commit to this withdrawal agreement? And we keep going, we don't really like it. And we're still doing the same thing. So the talks are going to carry on the same way. Are you going to stick to the withdrawal agreement? Because if not, there's no deal. We don't really like it. And so on and so on. Anyway, next one. Another suggestion. It says, look, maybe you could trade with Iran then. Now, I'm putting this one in purely because, just as a little random thought, it would be, I'm not at all in favour of breaking diplomatic ties with America in any way at all, even pulling back from them. It's not good. But I do sometimes wonder if, let's say, we weren't taking America's lead all the time, let's say we felt able, like France and Germany, you know, we're supposed to be a strong country, so why can't we do what France and Germany does? And when we disagree with America, we say, no, we're friends, but mate, that ain't a good decision. We don't agree with that, and we won't support you with that, because a good friend needs to tell you that you're about to make a right arse of yourself. You know, if we did that, I sometimes wonder what our relationship with Iran would be like. Maybe we'd have a much better relationship with other countries. Some other countries where I think we have a needlessly fractious relationship because we constantly take America's side all the time. Like I said, sometimes America feels it's in their interest for a fractious relationship to develop. I don't think it's ever in the UK's interest. Then another one, it says, the one thing, I think this is true, it says, one thing that Brits and Americans have in common is that most of them never learn to speak another language. I think it's much more the case in Britain. Many British assume they have more in common with the US than Europe because both speak, but those who actually bother visiting the US will notice the US is a very different society, not better or worse, just different. Britain is part of Europe, channel or no channel. And this is very, very true. You know, it's very difficult to get this across, because particularly when the Conservatives are in power, which they are a lot in the UK, but that's because of our weird political system. They don't really represent British values. Like in America, you do get the impression that, you know, a lot of Americans don't like taxes. Well, in this country, we do. People are polled regularly. We're quite happy to pay taxes because we're very proud of our public services. In America, that's a much more genuine debate. In this country, it's not. That's why Conservatives in this country talk about, oh yeah, of course, we're all for public services. We know they're not, but they talk about it because they know that British people want to hear that. In America, you're on much safer ground as a far right-wing politician arguing against public services, because you will have a much higher proportion of the population who will buy that. You know, we have a very different attitude towards social justice in the UK as the US. It's absolutely right. And we do have this thing in common. We are pig ignorant when it comes to language. And again, this is, America now is the most powerful country. I mean, we were, and again, it comes from that. It was like, well, if you want to talk to us, you speak English. That's how this works. And that used to work that at a time, then that was the case. It is no longer the case. So now all we do, language, of course, the great divider in humanity. We wouldn't have half as much difficulty in the world with nationalism if people would just, you know, if we'd have just happened to have all developed on the same island before and developed our own language before we all split off, you know. But there we go. That's geology's fault, really, for Pangaea all splitting up before we were ready. There we are. And then the final one. Did anyone really expect the Tories to understand anything about Ireland? No, not at all. Not at all. Of course, Conservatives will never get MPs in Northern Ireland. It's never going to happen. So they pay no interest to it at all. They don't pay very much interest to Scotland, for example, because they don't do very well in Scotland. Wales, they tend to do all right. But again, even in parts of England, you can look at, you know, the places where they traditionally get the bulk of their support in the shires. So they understand that part of England, the south, the southeast. They don't really understand the north of England, although it's going to be an interesting thing. Maybe they will have to make an effort to understand the north of England, because that's where they've got a lot of their support right now. And could well lose it if they don't start to understand it bloody quickly. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, it's no understanding of Ireland at all. The surprise was not that the Conservatives don't understand Ireland. They genuinely don't. They don't care. I cannot emphasise that enough. They do not care. But it was surprising that they don't understand America. That they don't understand the United States is surprising, because they genuinely look to the United States for political debate, political leadership. Genuinely. They love them. You're America's biggest fanboys. The fact that they didn't understand this basic relationship between America and Ireland is what is genuinely surprising. But anyway, there we go. Those are some of your questions there. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.